If any one of you have let yourself become involved with an adult homosexual and you're doing this on a regular basis, you better stop quick. Because this is one thing you cannot get away with, and the rest of your life will be a living hell.
The second paragraph in the Declaration of Independence states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness."
Throughout history, America has symbolized equality of opportunity of all races, origins, religions, and creeds, serving as a beacon of hope to end discrimination of gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity. A constitutional protection has been applied over the LGBT plus community to advance the cause of equality towards future generations, to thus be in better terms of understanding of each other.
The fight for LGBT plus rights has been an ongoing battle for many years. Over the course of the last few decades, the LGBT plus community in the United States has made tremendous strides towards equality, such as the Stonewall Riots of 1969. Tragically, in the 1900s, many members of the community were coerced into suppression. They were forced to live a life that was deemed acceptable by society. Then, on June 28, 1969, the Stonewall Riots catapulted the issue of sexual liberation out of the Dark Ages and into a new era in the LGBT plus movement, in which the community triumphed over the barriers and paved the way for future generations to express themselves freely.
During the 1950s, the LGBT plus community would often fall victim to society's ridicule. LGBT plus folk were different from the norm, therefore they were wrong and they were punished accordingly. Gay men and women were harassed by enforcement, fired from federal jobs, and forced to give up custody of their children. At the time, doctors and psychiatrists thought that queer people were mentally ill. The treatment for their so-called illness was electroshock, conversion, and intensive talk therapy. They would also be castrated or forced to have sexual intercourse with the opposite sex. However, therapy generally did not help and would oftentimes result in high risks of suicide and mental illnesses like depression and anxiety.
On April 27, 1953, President Dwight Eisenhower issued Executive Order 10450, an order that banned and fired gay men and women from working in the federal government. Section 8, Part A, the investigations conducted pursuant to this order shall be designed to develop information as to whether the employment or retention and employment in the federal service of the person being investigated is clearly consistent with the interests of the national security. Such information shall relate but shall not be limited to the following. 1. Depending on the relation of the government employment to the national security. 3 out of 3. Any criminal, infamous, dishonest, immoral, or notoriously disgraceful conduct, habitual use of intoxicants to access, drug addiction, sexual perversion. In Section 8, Part A, Number 3, it states that if the person being investigated is immoral or a sexual pervert, they would be a threat to national security. During the 50s, people who preferred being in same-sex relationships were viewed as moral perverts, meaning that they would not be allowed to serve the federal government.
Due to the torment caused by society, secret gatherings, clubs, and gay bars like the Stonewall Inn became safe havens for queer men and women who sought out a place where they could feel free to express themselves without fear of police targeting and punishing them for simply existing. Unfortunately, in most cases, these safe havens were still seen as prey for patrolling officers who would raid the bars. However, what enforcement and society did not expect was for the community to fight back. For instance, the 1966 police raid at Compton's cafeteria turned into a clash between reinforcements along with many trans women. A similar raid took place a year later, in 1967, at the Black Cat Tavern, where the raid caused an uprising among the LGBT plus patrons within the tavern. Slowly, the queer community began to fight back, like the trans women, LGBT plus patrons, and the Mattachine Society, who conducted frequent sit-ins at bars in 1966. But it wasn't until the Stonewall Riots that the LGBT plus movement took flight.
The Stonewall Inn was founded in 1846, located in New York City's Greenwich Village on Christopher Street. The Stonewall Inn was considered to be a safe place to all that were gay. At the time, New York bars that openly served alcohol to gay customers were often denied liquor licenses, and were frequently raided. The National Park Service states, "The events of Stonewall, as the uprising is most commonly referred to, marked as a major change in the struggle for homophile rights in the U.S., with lesbian women, gay men, bisexual, and transgender people beginning to vocally and assertively demand their civil rights." Stonewall is regarded by many as the single most important catalyst for the dramatic expansion of the LGBT plus civil rights movement. Stonewall gave rise to the rebellion that began the contemporary gay rights movement, now known today as the Stonewall Riots.
In the early hours of June 28, 1969, a police raid commenced between young gay, lesbian, and transgender individuals and the New York police, lasting 6 days of a series of spontaneous, violent demonstrations by the members of the LGBT plus community to fight for their rights. According to bystanders, police also began to sexually harass lesbian patrons while the police frisked them, and at this point a crowd of sympathizers began to form outside of the Stonewall Inn. Many of the participants had endured years of raids and beatings before they flung loose when a police officer started clubbing a lesbian named Stormy DeLavier. The crowd commenced throwing rocks, chairs, and glass bottles at police outside the Stonewall Inn, and in extreme cases people even started tipping cars over. Police, overwhelmed by the riot, they enclosed people inside the Stonewall Inn by bombarding random onlookers into the bar with a refusal of a leave of exit to anyone. In response, rioters proceeded to set the Stonewall Inn on fire.
Marsha P. Johnson, an African-American transgender woman, was an outspoken advocate for the LGBT plus rights, alongside another trans woman named Sylvia Rivera. In many aspects, both Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera played pivotal roles in the Stonewall Uprising of 1969. It was believed that Marsha P. Johnson threw the first brick at Stonewall in a forward response to the unjust raid that the police officers were performing, as many eyewitnesses have identified her as one of the main instigators of the uprising alongside Sylvia Rivera, as they accompanied each other through the front lines of the riots. Although these advocates were important to the historical background of the Stonewall Riots, we cannot reduce the LGBT plus community's impact in the Stonewall Riots as a whole to society's change towards the community.
The Stonewall Riots ended up creating a chain reaction of uprisings from the LGBT plus community, which are now called Pride Parades. The first instance of a Pride Parade had been proposed by 4 important LGBT plus activists at the time: Craig Rodwell, Fred Sargent, Linda Rhodes, and Ellen Brody, and was held exactly 1 year after the beginning of the Stonewall Riots, June 28th of 1970, on Christopher Street, the exact street where the Stonewall Inn lies, in order to celebrate the victories that the Stonewall Riots had led the LGBT plus community into. Eventually, after seeing the impact of these parades, many other places began to adopt this tradition in June, leading June to be officially claimed as LGBT plus Pride Month in the U.S.
Since the Stonewall Riots, the LGBT plus community has been able to accomplish many outstanding things, such as removing homosexuality from the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Illnesses, being able to marry their same-sex partners, and allowing gay and lesbian people to serve in the military. Although the community has been able to overcome many hurdles since the riots, there are still so many things yet to accomplish, such as lifting the transgender military ban, which has only taken effect January 22nd of this year, completely banning conversion therapies, and further changing our perspective as a society to the point where hate crimes, such as the Pulse nightclub shooting that had occurred in 2016, do not occur as often as they do now, if at all.
The Stonewall Riots were the beginning of the modern era of the LGBT plus movement. These riots opened up discussion and sparked activism and awareness across the United States, changing the perspective of many, thus bringing upon the changes that we have managed to reach today. And while we have yet to reach perfection, we still owe a lot to the brave LGBT plus patrons who fought for us, and for the rights that the LGBT plus community now upholds based on June 28th at the Stonewall Inn, where people fought for their rights.